please welcome back Mr. Haupt and the color wheel. Mr. Haupt, what are we going to do in this lesson?
All right, we have the color wheel established. And what I've added to the wheel, you can see here, are letters. We've got P, I, and S. So we've set where I'm going to actually paint the primaries here, here, and here. So at 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 8 o'clock is where I'm going to set my primaries up. My red, yellow, and blue. Midpoint in between those two is my secondary. So whatever colors I put here and here, this will be the mix of those two. So I have a secondary at 2 o'clock, 6, and 10 o'clock. All the remaining 6 colors are the intermediate colors that we're going to paint.
Mr. Haupt, I'm not quite sure I got that. Could you review that for me just one time, please?
So what we've established are the locations for where we're going to paint the 3 primary colors, the 3 secondary colors, and the remaining intermediate colors, which there are 6. So we have 12 o'clock as a primary, separated by 4 spaces. At 4 o'clock we have another primary. 4 more spaces, we have the 3rd primary right here. Midpoint in between the 2 primaries is where our secondaries are going to go. So here, between these two, here, and then here, and then lastly, these 2 primaries, midpoint, we have a secondary right there. Okay, so to begin the actual painting portion of this lesson, I want to talk about a couple of the things you need to have handy. What you can see here is our paint palette. What I've put out here are my 3 primary colors, already in their small mixing areas. I have a round brush here. I also brought along a rag, you can see up here, and also a nice cup of water. That should be everything we need to complete all portions of this wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and begin, and I've already mixed a little bit of water in each of these trays because we don't want the paint to go on thick. It's got to be watered down so it flows smoothly. I'm going to go ahead and start with the color red. It doesn't really matter which color you put where, as long as that you know when you're mixing these two, that would be the secondary of those two. So I'll go ahead and start with the color red. So what I'm going to do is just use the brush like a small sponge and absorb a little bit in the tip, as you can see right there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and then paint it up at 12 o'clock. So I just lay it in and just fill that space, and it goes on nice and fluid, and that's about all the time I really need to establish that color. Okay, now I still have a lot of paint left in this brush here, and I don't want to waste any paint. So what I'm going to try to do is just wipe it back into this area. Okay, I'll go ahead and rinse that brush. Very important to rinse the brush. Keep it nice and clean like this. Because if I have a contaminated brush here and I start to dip into these colors, these become contaminated. Then I'll need to get more paint, and then it's a whole new process. Okay, so I've got the primary established here. What I'll do is grab the next primary. I'll go ahead and put yellow at 4 o'clock. Same procedure. Dip a bunch in there. Load up the brush nicely, lay it in that little space that I drew, and just like that. That is plenty fine. Wipe off the excess, rinse my brush in my cup of water. Okay, and then I'll move on to the final primary, which is the blue. Same thing, just a little bit out toward the tip is plenty. And I'm going to go over to 8 o'clock, and I'll fill in this zone right here. Okay, and with water paint, you don't need to push around the paint too much because it's not going to have any really changing effect. So you just kind of leave it like you see right there. So that's our starting point, the 3 primaries. Pause it if you want. Okay, now begins the process of painting the remaining colors. Okay, so we're going to work with red and yellow. We're going to create these warm colors, which would be orange, red orange, and also yellow orange, which are going to be in these here. So I'm going to start by trying to make orange. Now the key to making orange would be to start with the lightest color, which is here yellow, and then slowly adding a little bit of this red to make that color. And we're going to do it out in these mixing areas here, as you can see on the palette. So I'll take my brush, I'll absorb as much yellow as I can. It is the color that gets consumed the fastest. So I'll take that, I'll lay it out here, grab a little bit more, lay it out here like this. Okay. I rinse my brush again. And then I'm going to grab just the smallest amount of red just in the tip of this brush. So you can see like that. You can see a little bit right there. And then thoroughly mix it out here. I'm hoping to make orange. Sometimes I make a yellow orange, sometimes a red orange. And if I have done that, I'm going to go ahead and lay it in its location. So this looks to me to be a good classic orange. So I'm going to soak up as much as I can in my brush. And the orange goes midpoint in between the red and the yellow. So I'll go ahead and just fill that area in. Okay, so now we've established orange. As I mentioned before, the yellow gets consumed quickly. So what I did here is I add a little more yellow directly to this mixing area. And then with my brush, I mixed it up. So what I'm trying to create here are the remaining colors. Between orange and yellow, I should have what we call intermediate color, which is yellow-orange. And in this zone up here, I should have what's a cross between these two, which should be a red-orange. What I've made here is a yellow-orange, so I'm going to go ahead and just use that in this location here. And when you're making the wheel, if you don't make the right color and you paint it, do not start the wheel over again. Just next to it, make your proper color and just lay it down right next to it there. That's fine. So I'm going to move on now. And to this, I'm going to add a little more red to try to create my red-orange. Once again, just a little bit in the tip, and I can keep darkening it as needed. We've got our orange. I'll grab a little more red. Looking for a deep, kind of a sunset kind of red-orange. That looks good to me. I'll lay that right in here. Okay, so now I've got red, red-orange, orange, yellow-orange, and yellow. So I'm going to clean my brush now. I'm going to work on to the next section. Now that we've established the warm colors up here, we're going to move on to the next secondary color, which is a combination of blue and yellow, which is green. So we're going to start by taking the lighter pigment, yellow, putting it out into the mixing area, and adding just a little bit of blue. Blue is very, very potent color, and just a little bit goes a long way. You'll see as I try to make green. So I'll scoop some up with my brush, bring it out to the mixing area. That should be good there. Once again, rinse the brush as thoroughly as you can. Dab it off on your rag. Grab a little bit of blue with the tip and begin to mix thoroughly. So all those two colors are mixed. And it looks as if I've made, looks like the best green I could probably get from these two pigments. So I'll load up my brush and work that in right here. Kind of a grassy green. Okay. Now next we'll go ahead and do is I'll add a little more yellow to try to create this color, which is a yellow green. And it should resemble the color of lime green or kind of like a Gatorade color. So scoop some more yellow. Mix that in there. A little bit more. Okay, there we are. Load up the brush. So it's lots of paint on that brush. So these colors are nice and rich out here. And we'll fill that in. That should be kind of a combination of these two. And that looks pretty good for yellow-green. And the last one I'm going to work on for this section would be a blue-green. So I'll keep the yellow-green I've got here. And just grab some more blue. Mix that thoroughly. If it gets dry in the mixing area here, just get a little bit more water, just like that. Stir it around. Load up the brush one more time. And paint that into this area out here. Okay, now we have our secondary of green, the intermediate of blue-green, the other intermediate of yellow-green. The last section would deal with the violets up here. Okay, like before, when I want to make a color, I'm going to start with the lighter pigment. So I'm going to grab first a little bit of red into my mixing area out here. and add a little bits of blue to try to establish violet, blue violet, and red violet. So I'm beginning with scooping up as much red as I can, pulling it out to the mixing area. It's a little dry, so I'm going to grab a little bit of water. There we go. I'm going to go over and grab a little bit of blue, soak up a little bit, come back out to here, mix it up thoroughly. Looks like I need more blue. Here we go. Okay. Now when I look at this, this has more reddish hue than it does blue. So that would qualify as red violet, which goes here. So I'm going to go ahead and load up my brush and just fill that area in like that. Okay. Now to complete this, I'll go back and grab more blue, add it out here. I'm trying to achieve a violet, which should look a little like this, what you have here, this little compass. That's pretty close. So this is good enough for my violet, and that's going to go here at 10 o'clock. I'll brush that in, just like this. And then for the last, just add more blue to that last mix you made. Soak up some good blue in there, bring it out, mix it up. That looks pretty good. A little bit more. That there is a good blue violet. Kind of a midnight blue, they call it. There we go. You can see that rich, dark purple. Okay, so all of my colors are different. I've got my primaries at 12, 4, and 8, secondaries in between, at 10, at 2, and at 6 o'clock. Then all the remaining areas are the intermediates. So you should have 3 primaries, 3 secondaries, and 6 intermediates. So once again, this is the completed color wheel. As you can see here, all the colors are equally rich. Some tendencies you want to avoid would be not using enough paint, so that these areas out here are very, very watered down, and then as you transfer those to the paper, you really can't see the color. Okay. Also, I used one mixing area, but all the mixing areas you have out here are for your use. Okay, so you don't have to clean out each one each time. Okay, so the color wheel here that we've made really is more of a tool for your use. The main goal is so you know how to make the different colors when you're looking at perhaps a photograph or a painting and you want to copy those colors, of which colors to mix to achieve those colors. So here what we can do to kind of finalize the wheel is we could label it, and we can create a little triad of sorts, which is a triangle that connects all 3 primaries. And you could label up here primaries if you wish. You can do the same thing with the secondaries if you'd like. Or, just for fun practice, go back, grab your brush, grab a little bit of paint that you made, and you can go ahead and just write what you made, which is the color wheel. That way you get used to using the brush, how the tip works, and voila, you're done. And last but not least, the most important thing I want you to get from this is to have a fabulous time painting.